Welcome back to True Cybercrimes. I'm Chris and I'm here with Nick for the fifth and final episode of our series, Inside the Mind of a Ransomware Operator. Today we're diving into the future of digital extortion, what's next, what's evolving, and how both attackers and defenders are adapting to the ever-changing battlefield.
That's right, Chris. So for 4 episodes now, we've explored the psychology, the tactics, and ultimately the human cost that comes from ransomware. Now we're looking ahead to what might be the most transformative period in the history of cybercrime. Obviously, from AI-powered attacks to, we're starting to hear more about quantum computing and the threats that come from that. The landscape it continues shifting at its breakneck speed. It's just not slowing down.
So let's start with AI here. And I have to say, it's both fascinating and terrifying. We're already seeing examples of AI being weaponized by ransomware operators. Imagine malware that learns from its environments, adapting to defense in real time and even negotiates ransoms autonomously. That's crazy.
Right. It's taking your hands off the wheel. It's the self-driving Tesla of cybercrime. Yeah, I mean, we're giving cyber criminals superhuman abilities, or any criminals to become, kind of superhuman cyber
And,
terrorists.
and we're giving schmuck criminals the ability to just be cyber criminals.
Yeah, it's really lowering the bar. Creates a nuisance and risk for all of us. A strain of malware that's recently been identified. It used the machine learning to identify the most valuable files on a system. So instead of encrypting everything randomly, which is just the nuclear option, it prioritized databases, financial records, intellectual property, and then the attack as a result was surgical in its precision. That's crazy.
And that's really chilling. And it goes beyond just file selection, doesn't it? AI can generate the entire reconnaissance phase. An AI system can spend weeks learning an organization's network topology, identify key personnel, and even analyze communication patterns to craft the perfect spear phishing campaign. I mean, that's just mind blowing.
Yeah, and spear phishing again is it's very targeted phishing instead of the generic. This is somebody who's targeting Chris Kuselis, who lives where you live and does what you do, and
Yeah.
has had the titles that you've had. It sounds very very much built for you. And there are groups that are using AI that generates personalized phishing emails. So they feed it LinkedIn profiles, social media profiles, posts, even articles about a company that they're targeting. And the result is these emails that are so convincing that professionals in our industry have fallen for them.
So we had a podcast sometime back where we talked about the really the first ransomware attack where the villain in the story was going to go to a conference. So it was an AIDS conference. So he sent out floppy disks, and you lowered the floppy disk, and it got ransomware on your computer, and so on and so forth. So there's an example more recently where AI crafted an email referencing a specific conference. So I mean, what's old is new again, and then the target just that the target had just attended, mentioning presentations that he had seen. So the level of detail was incredible and completely automated. So
Yeah.
now they've taken it to a new level over the last 40 years.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about what keeps you up at night. Um, AI in this case isn't really just making the attacks more effective for the bad guys. It's allowing them to scale. I mean, think about how we use AI. I can generate a week's worth of work on some things in an hour or two. The bad guys can do the same, with this type of stuff. So, traditional ransomware operations that once required human operators for each and every step, the reconnaissance, the customization, the negotiation. Now you've got artificial intelligence that can handle all of that at the simultaneously across hundreds or even thousands of targets. I mean, that's that's scale.
Well, and you had mentioned something earlier with the autonomous negotiation. Are we really at the point where AI can conduct ransomware negotiations?
I mean, it seems like we're getting there faster than, I think a lot of us thought was possible. I've seen chatbots that, they're, as with any of these large language models, they're trained on thousands of previous ransom negotiations. You just feed these into the system, and it's like, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't, and you're building a kind of a perfect model. They can assess the victim's financial capacity. They, adjust the demands based on, level of resistance that they're gauging, and even employ, psychological pressure as tactics. And some of these systems can even conduct negotiations in multiple languages. So they've got, reach up to 17 languages around the world.
17 languages. I wonder if there is any human negotiator that could manage that. Um, but but here's what I find particularly disturbing. AI can also help operators evade detection by mimicking normal user behavior patterns so that that standard software can't detect an anomaly. This is normal user behavior.
Yeah, I mean, and AI, I think we've seen in the last couple of years, AI can become somewhat predictable. So this is that holy grail for attackers
Yeah.
is traditional malware, often gets caught because it behaves differently than legitimate software, and there's a profile out there that we can use to look for it. But AI powered malware can study how real users are interacting with systems and then mimic those human patterns perfectly. So, the inconsistency that comes with real people is now being mimicked. And it can make network traffic look normal. It can, make file access patterns appear, very routine during, expected hours, and the number of files that are maybe being exfiltrated, things like that, and even simulate human typing rhythms, which is just wild to me.
So we're dealing with a digital shapeshifter, right? So
Yeah.
uh, so let's shift gears to something that's revolutionizing how attackers think about targets. Supply chain warfare. This isn't just about compromising one organization anymore.
Supply chain attacks are like the ultimate force multiplier. Why break into
Yeah.
100 companies one at a time when you can compromise one trusted vendor and
Yeah.
reach them all? The SolarWinds attack was frankly a masterclass in this type of approach. 18,000 organizations were potentially affected through one compromise. So
And
working
and the
smarter, not harder.
right, everybody should do that. So
Yeah.
and ransomware groups are absolutely taking notes on this. I've seen some forum discussions where operators share techniques for identifying high value supply chain targets. They're looking for companies that provide software updates, cloud services, or security tools to multiple clients.
And the psychology is really brilliant and in a terrifying way. The attackers, they understand that modern businesses operate on trust. We trust our vendors, we trust our service providers, our software updates. We automatically click this stuff without looking or thinking about it, and that trust becomes a weapon in their hands.
The attack surface just keeps getting bigger and bigger and expanding. With digital transformation accelerating, companies are relying on more third-party services than ever, cloud providers, SaaS platforms, API integration. Each one is a potential entry point.
I recently, was going through and kind of did some analysis and some reading on an attack where criminals compromised a help desk ticketing system used by multiple managed services providers. You can probably guess, one or two of those systems, and through that single breach, they gained access to over 200 client networks. So the victims, in this case, they didn't even know they were connected to the original compromise point.
And that's just an absolute nightmare scenario for defenders. Invisible connections that create unexpected vulnerabilities, but law enforcement isn't sitting idle at it either. We're seeing more international cooperation and some pretty innovative countermeasures.
Absolutely. Yeah. The FBI's recent disruption of CakeBot botnet was impressive. They didn't just take down servers, they pushed uninstall commands to infected machines worldwide. So they effectively were using the criminal's own network against them, which is, I love to see that.
And we're seeing more international task force. The recent arrests of our evil operators involved cooperation between U.S., Russia, which really surprises me, and then several European countries. That level of coordination would have been, just unthinkable just a decade ago.
Yeah, but there's always a catch. It's still a cat and mouse game. For every network law enforcement that they shut down, three more are going to pop up. Cut the head off the snake, and you get five more in its place. And the decentralized nature of modern ransomware operations make them incredibly resilient. These aren't traditional crime syndicates with clear hierarchies, as we've seen in the past.
And Nick, we've talked about this in past episodes. These are just franchises. That's what they've become. Ransomware franchises. There's ransomware as a service model is democratized cybercrime in ways we're still grappling with. Anyone with a few $100s can rent professional grade ransomware tools.
Yeah, and I feel like we've talked about this almost on a weekly basis, but
yeah,
it's cybercrime for hire. They've got the customer care, customer support, user manuals, money back guarantees. It's a 24/7, business that provides support to, affiliates or clients or whatever. And they've industrialized the aspect of criminal activity. It's just another business.
And the barriers to entry keep getting lower. You don't need to be a coding genius anymore. Just follow a tutorial and you're in business. It's like the difference between building a car from scratch and buying one from a dealership.
And it brings up an interesting point, I think, about the future psychology of these operators. So, as ransomware becomes more automated and accessible, we might see a shift from, the more sophisticated criminals that we've been discussing to more opportunistic actors.
That's a scary thought. At least the sophisticated groups had some level of, do I hesitate to say professionalism, but they understood that the business implications of their actions. What happens when every disgruntled teenager can launch ransomware attacks?
Yeah, I mean, we might see a lot more chaotic and unpredictable attacks, I think, as a result. The current ransomware ecosystem, for all its criminal nature, operates kind of with unspoken rules. Most groups, as we've talked about, avoid hospitals, but it's not, absolute. They avoid schools, mostly. Critical infrastructure, less of that. Not so much out of morality as we talked about, but really the business reasons. And they attract too much attention, and law enforcement and regulation and all those things really come down hard on them, making their livelihood a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and if the barrier to the entry drops low enough, those informal rules they may just disappear. We could see attacks driven by ideology, revenge, or just pure malice rather than profit.
Yeah, and that, I think, leads to perhaps the most concerning trend that I've been seeing, and that's targeting of critical infrastructure, right? Whether it's power grids or water sources, transportation systems. The Colonial Pipeline attack was kind of the beginning of that. It's chilling.
And the stakes are no longer just financial, are they? When ransomware hits a hospital's life support system or a city's power grid, we're talking about potential loss of life. The human cost we discussed in our last episode, it becomes more direct.
And the attackers know this increases their leverage. I mean, at an exponential, by an exponential factor, really.
Sure.
It's one thing for a company to lose some data. It's another when people lose their lives. If those systems remain down. So the psychological pressure on the decision makers becomes immense. And, just as a side note, this is where those, tabletop, exercises, simulations become so important, because, if you've thought about it before, when it's the real deal, you're a lot more likely to, not feel as much psychological pressure because you kind of got a run book of, how you're going to deal with that.
Sure. So where does this arms race lead us? Are we heading towards a future of constant cyber warfare?
I think we're going to see AI-driven defense systems that uh, hopefully and likely will predict and block attacks before they're able to fully execute. We've had machine learning models for a while, and training them on millions of attack patterns. They're capable of recognizing novel threats and adapting in real time, just like the offensive side is. The defensive side can do it too.
So now we're fighting AI with AI, really. But won't attackers just develop counter AI to bypass those defenses?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably already some AI versus AI battles happening at
Yeah.
machine speed. Human operators are on both sides, kind of becoming, an army of generals directing automated armies, rather than, the hands-on combatants rather.
Sure.
Um, and, just kind of a wild thought here is everything we've talked about, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And so we're talking about AI versus AI. At what point are we going to see, hey, in order for AI to outmaneuver AI, we've got to have a human element added back in. So I
Yeah.
kind of wonder when we're going to see that next step. But
Yeah. That's a great point. And it's a wild image, cyber warfare conducted by competing AIs while humans watch from the sidelines. But what about the quantum computer? I keep hearing, that's supposed to change everything when we get to it.
it's a wild card, and it's coming a lot quicker than I think a lot of us expected. Once quantum computers become practical, not just these science experiments, they'll very likely break all current encryption methods.
Yeah.
Ransomware operators wouldn't need to steal data at that point. They can just decrypt it directly, which crazy powerful.
But won't defenders have access to quantum computing too? I mean, they can develop quantum resistant encryption.
And that's the goal, right? That's what we're seeing them try to do now. NIST is already working on post-quantum cryptographic standards, but there's always going to be a transition period where some systems are vulnerable, lagging behind, people haven't, kept up, and that's where attackers are going to strike. And if that's part of the supply chain, that'll be still pretty detrimental.
So we're looking at multiple technological revolutions happening simultaneously. AI, quantum computing, increased connectivity through IoT devices. Each one creates new opportunities for both attack and defense.
And don't forget the popularity of Bitcoin. There's the evolution of cryptocurrency as well.
Yeah.
Privacy coins and decentralized finance protocols are making it much harder to trace those ransom payments. So attackers are already experimenting with smart contracts that automatically execute ransom demands.
Automated extortion through blockchain technology. That's actually pretty, I guess, in a terrifying way, remove the human element entirely from the payment process.
Yeah, it also removes negotiation and mercy from the equation. So a smart contract doesn't care if you're a children's hospital or cancer research center. All moral and ethics are out. It's just the computer ones and zeros. It's just executing its program instructions.
Ouch. Ouch. Which brings us full circle to the human element we've discussed throughout this series. Even as attacks become more automated, the impact on real people remains devastatingly personal.
It's the paradox that we're facing, Chris. Technology is making these crimes efficient, widespread. Victims are still, people like you and I, flesh and blood, with families and dreams and vulnerabilities.
So, as we get ready to wrap this up, what's our takeaway? Are we pessimistic about the future?
I think I'm realistic. The threat is evolving rapidly. It's going to get worse before it gets better, as with many things. But I think understanding these criminals, understanding the psychology, the tools and methods and motivations, it does give us advantages to defending against them if we're being pragmatic and considering all that.
And there's really some reasons for hope here. I think the biggest one, at least for me, is that collaboration between law enforcement agencies worldwide. To think Russia is helping us find those, that just blows me away. That's great to hear that. And then there's better information sharing between organizations and genuine innovation in defensive technologies.
Plus, as the attacks that we're seeing affect more people, more institutions, the political and economic pressure, are growing quickly to address the serious problems. Cybersecurity, and we've been saying this for a while now, is no longer just a niche IT concern. It's national security, it's public safety issue at its core.
And the key is staying ahead of the curve. Organizations can't wait for the perfect security solution. I think we know that. They need to be implementing defenses now, training their people, and building resilience into their operations.
And individuals aren't is still culpable, right? Need to understand that cybersecurity isn't just the IT department's job anymore, right? How many of us have an IT department at home that we can rely on? We still have to take, personal accountability there. So we're all potential targets, and we all have a role to play in defending against this stuff.
And as we conclude the series, I just keep thinking about something that came up in one of our earlier episodes, that these aren't faceless monsters. They're people making choices. Understanding these choices helps us predict and prevent their actions.
Exactly. The more we humanize these criminals, not excuse them, but look for understanding of them, I think the better equipped we're going to be to defend as their tactics continue to evolve.
And with that, it brings us to the end of our series, Inside the Mind of a Ransomware Operator. It's really been fascinating, and sometimes disturbing, this journey into psychology and the methods of digital extortion.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody who's followed along with this series. I'd love to hear feedback. Do you like the series approach that we're doing here versus single stories? This was fun for me, but that doesn't mean that it's what you want to hear. So we'd love to hear that. But in the meantime, stay vigilant, stay informed. Remember that cybersecurity is ultimately about protecting the things we value most. This is our communities, our institutions, and essentially each other.
And with that, Nick, if there's something that folks would like to hear us do a series on or do a podcast on, let us know.
Yeah.
But until next time, this has been True Cybercrime. Stay safe out there. Thanks, Nick. We'll talk to you next time.
Good stuff. Thanks, Chris.